Hey everyone, so I am super excited because I've had this movie stuck in my head ever since I saw it a few days ago, and it's the movie Longlegs, starring Maika Monroe, Nicolas Cage, Blair Underwood, and Alicia Witt, just to name a few. And it's directed by Osgood Perkins. He's directed things like The Black Coat's Daughter and Gretel and Hansel, which I actually watched that movie a few years back. I had no idea that was him, but it's apparent going back and watching that movie. The way that movie was shot, I don't know if it had the same DP. It felt shot the same, like the way he liked to symmetrically frame all the actors and everything in the frame. It was just super well done. I can't rave about this movie enough, and I just needed to talk about it. I have no idea how long this video is going to be, but I knew that I kind of wanted to go into an analysis for it slash review. I'll start just kind of by going through a brief synopsis of the movie. A young FBI agent named Lee Harker, who's played by Maika Monroe, and she gets enlisted in the mission to track down a psychopath who spent years on a killing spree. She has a mysterious past, but she must solve this series of occult clues to end this terrifying serial killer named Longlegs, who's played brilliantly by Nicolas Cage, the Nicolas Cage. And I'm going to get into his performance a little bit later, but I'm going to start off by saying Maika Monroe absolutely knocks it out of the park in this movie. I mean, her performance is just amazing. The way she just like plays it like socially awkward. And I was just like, what the hell is she doing? Like the way she was like interacting with people, I was like, this is like, she is just weird, but I love it. She is great, and I loved her in It Follows. She just has a thing for being in really good horror movies, so this is no different. Although I'd kind of call Longlegs more of a psychological thriller, less of a straight-up horror movie. It's not going to be like a jump scare fest like The Conjuring or Insidious. Nevertheless, this is an absolutely great movie. It definitely harkens back to 90s serial killer movies like Seven or Silence of the Lambs, which it's like, in the marketing for the movie, it's praised to be the scariest movie since Silence of the Lambs. And I'm like, okay, like they really are hyping the shit out of this movie. And also I saw the video where they had Maika Monroe's heartbeat actually on recording as she interacted with Nicolas Cage for the first time acting together. I won't spoil, actually fuck it, I'll spoil the scene. Later in the movie, Maika Monroe it's a scene where she's going in and she's doing this interrogation with Longlegs, Lee Harker is, so she goes in there and it's this really intense scene, but her heartbeat, is just skyrocketing through the roof. I think they said she topped out at like 170 beats per minute. And, they were really trying to like hype that up and be like, oh my God, it's the scariest movie ever. Well, I think the movie is really good. I think it's one of the best, not just horror movies, but movies of the year so far. I don't think it's one of the scariest movies ever, especially as like a seasoned horror fan. Alicia Witt, she was also really good as Ruth Harker. She plays Lee's mom in the movie, and she is a standout for sure. I think her performance is going to be slept on, and I hope like it gets more recognition. Obviously, people are talking about the Nicolas Cage, Nick Cage, and all of his Nick Cage glory in this movie, and he did not disappoint.
He sprouted antlers like a gazelle, like an elk. He landed again. He ran. He scored a touchdown.
Honestly, I had no idea what to expect. I had no idea what the movie was going to be about going into it. I kind of just saw the marketing for it, and that had no Nicolas Cage in the trailers. And I was like, okay, what's he going to be? I'm guessing he's like the serial killer in this. The reveal of his character is terrifying. The way he portrays the character is it's absolutely terrifying. But at the same time, I was laughing in the theater. He was It's so over the top, and as I just love it. I love Nick Cage. There was a scene in this movie where he's like gripping a steering wheel and he's like, "Mommy, Daddy." What is going on? But I'm all here for it. And then there's another scene where he's just like, "Rat." I literally like could not control myself. It was just so funny. But I'm just like, am I supposed to be afraid of this dude, or am I supposed to be laughing at him? But he plays it so well to the point where I'm like, I don't want to be around this guy. Like, I feel like I shouldn't even be watching this. Blair Underwood, he was fantastic. Unfortunately, there's so many good performances in it that I feel like he's, definitely going to be overlooked too. But, he was a great supporting character as Agent Carter. Kind of want to go into more of like how the movie unravels. So that being said, I know I've kind of already like spoiled bits and pieces of the movie already, but this is going to be a full-on spoiler review / analysis. So if you don't want to hear that, if you want to go see the movie first, go see it, please. I think you really should pay your money and go see it in a theater. We start the movie off in this 4:3 aspect ratio, and it's a look in the past of this little girl looking out a window, and this car is driving up, and we don't know who it is, we don't know what's going on, but this car is just like sitting outside of this girl's house, and we see like a zoom in on the house, and I'm just like, okay, you're already in an immediate state of like dread or uncomfortability. And so she goes out of the house, and she encounters the Nick Cage character, Longlegs, but he's not revealed. We only see the bottom of his body until he kind of like bends down, and we see the bottom half of his face where we see his mouth, and that's like the first look we get of him. And it's very unsettling to look at, and the fact that we don't really see a whole lot of him until later on in the movie is really well done on their part, because the way they cut this movie together, the sound design is just very unsettling. It's just, if I had to put it any sort of way, it's an assault on the senses, and that's kind of what makes it so scary. I feel like that's kind of what people are taking and running with, is like, oh, it's so scary, but honestly it's just assaulting the senses. It's a really good tactic to really get under the skin of the audience members, and I think Osgood Perkins did a fantastic job. And the editor, I'm not sure what the editor's name was, but I'm sure they did a phenomenal job in the editing room, working long hours to make this movie look and flow just as good as it possibly could. That first scene happens, right? And then we open up to a full screen. We kind of see that Lee Harker, she's a very like socially awkward person. She's an FBI agent now, and she's tracking down the serial killer with her partner. But we get a look at the fact that Lee Harker might have some sort of psychic abilities as she goes down this street of this neighborhood, and she looks at this house, and she's like, that's where the serial killer is hiding. And so her partner's like, how do you know that? And she's like, I just know. He gets killed. So dumbass, am I right? Maika Monroe goes into the house, and she finds the killer and stops him. Blair Underwood's character, he is like, hey, we were basically just like testing you to see like if you had psychic abilities. And she's like, oh, okay. She didn't actually say that, but it's like kind of what I'm just paraphrasing. So they were testing her to see, because he wants to put her on the Longlegs case. So she starts going on that and really like diving all into who this person is, where he's like, hey, you've been working too hard, let's go get a drink. And she's like, I don't drink. And he's like, shut the hell up, we're going to drink, basically. And so they go to a bar. He has a lot of drinks, and she's like, okay, I'll take you home. Takes Agent Carter home, meets his little girl. His little girl later on is like, Lee Harker, please, like, come to my birthday party. That becomes an important plot point later on, because Longlegs actually has a killing pattern of killing little girls every August 14th, and her birthday happens to be, you guessed it, on August 14th. So it's just a cool how they work that in full circle at the end of the movie, but I'll go into that later. Longlegs starts leaving Maika Monroe like clues as to things that she could decipher, and quickly realizes that Longlegs is a satanic killer. It's super unsettling, like the way this movie was shot, because you're just in Lee Harker's house, and the camera's on Maika Monroe. She's center of the frame, but you see the left corner of her room, you see the right corner of her room, where there's a bunch of open empty space and like dark corners, and you're like, is Longlegs just like creeping behind there somewhere? Just playing with the viewer's imagination it's one of the best things a filmmaker could do, and Oz Perkins just absolutely nailed that in this movie. Maika Monroe goes to her mom, and she's like, hey, do you know this guy that like visited us when we were younger, or when I was younger? And her mom's like, oh no, I have no idea, what are you talking about? Gaslighting her, hello. Lee Harker finds a picture of Longlegs, and that's when it's revealed that that at the beginning of the movie the little girl was Lee Harker, and the man was Longlegs. So it was just like cool how they did that. But so she figures out that who Longlegs is and like what is going to happen next, and they're able to find Longlegs. And this hilarious scene happens where Longlegs is on a road, police are surrounding him, and this movie cop out of nowhere just like comes up and he points at him. He's like, get on the fucking ground. The movie cop does this movie cop thing, arrests Longleg. That's when the incredible interrogation scene between Maika Monroe and Nicolas Cage happens, and he's not answering any of her questions, but then he implies, hey, you should ask your mom about what's been going on. And it's like, what? Like, what do you mean? Because this whole movie, like, Lee Harker's got a hunch that Longlegs has some sort of accomplice. And it's later revealed that Ruth, her mom, was Longlegs' a longtime accomplice through the entire history of his killing spree, because she thought she was protecting her daughter from basically the devil, but then she ended up becoming the thing that she was trying to protect her against. I was doing research about the movie afterwards, and I was like, what did Oz Perkins mean when he was making this? And I saw an interview where he basically says that the movie was inspired by his mom, and I was like, the fuck? Like, what are you talking about? It's inspired by your mom. But not obviously in the way where it's like satanic, like all that, she was like crazy or something. It was just inspired by his mom. And then Nicolas Cage in an interview was like, hey, that's weird, because I read the script and I thought about my mom's voice, and what inspired his performance, I guess. And I was like, what? So everybody's just thinking about their mom when they're like watching this like terrible, like horrific movie? Motherhood seems to be a pretty big theme that the movie likes to explore. I think what Oz Perkins was trying to get across was that maybe Lee Harker might have stopped Agent Carter's little girl from being killed, but at what cost? Like, she shoots and kills her mom. She commits matricide, which is one of the worst things that you could ever do. So it's almost like, did Lee Harker herself become the one thing that she was fighting against? Did she become the devil and kind of carry on with Longlegs, like satanic whatever he was doing? I don't know, but the movie explores I feel like the metaphor that the dolls that Longlegs plants basically in all these homes that are causes like the demonic possession in these families and like forces them to kill each other. It's just basically like showing them, hey, like, you're killing the families because like this is like the darker side of you. Like, maybe this is like you being like, hey, what if I didn't have a family at all? I think what the movie also does well is exploring the relationship between mother and daughter, and I think just about a child and parent relationship in general. It's pretty apparent that that's what it's about, and how that changes as we get older. Some for the better, some for the worse, but how a mother's good intentions could create not so good results. A mother's good intentions can consume her and end up turning her into the one thing that she doesn't want to be, quite literally the devil in the case in this movie. But and then eventually, like, possibly even turning her daughter into it. I don't know. It's the movie kind of ends and you're just like, it leaves you thinking about it for a long time, and you're just like, wow. But the movie gives you a lot to chew on afterwards. And I found that, initially I was like, oh, that was a pretty entertaining movie. Nicolas Cage was, insane. But I was like, it was entertaining. But when I left the theater and when I kept thinking about it for the next few days, I was like, wow, that was actually like a really thought-provoking movie about family